Uh, Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the Development Control and Regulatory Board being held at Leicestershire County Council on Thursday, the 30th of November 2023. This is a public meeting, is being broadcast via YouTube. Could I remind members to turn their microphones on when speaking and turn them off when they have finished speaking. With regard to the board membership, I would like to welcome back Mr. John Coxon, County Councillor, who is now a permanent member of the board, replacing Mr. Craig Smith. Fine, thank you. We have one substitute today. Rosita Page is here instead of Daniel Grimley. So welcome, Rosita, and thank you. Moving on to the agenda. Agenda item 1, minutes of the meeting held on the 25th of October 2023, pages 3 to 8. I propose that the minutes of the meeting held on the 25th of October 2023 are taken as read, confirmed and signed. Everybody in agreement? Thank you, members. Agenda item 2 is question time. I have not received any questions from the public. Agenda item 3, questions asked by members under Standing Order 7 (3) and 7 (5). I have not received any questions from members. Agenda item 4 is to advise of any other items which the chairman has decided to take as urgent elsewhere on the agenda. There are no urgent items today. Agenda item 5, declarations of interest in respect of items on the agenda. It is noted that all members who are also members of a parish, town or district council or liaison committee will have personal interests in those applications which relate to the areas covered by those authorities. Are there any other interests to declare? Mr. Merry.
Thank you, Chair. I'm obviously, as you've said, I'm chairman of the parish council of Ellistown and Battleflat. I'm also the district councillor for Ellistown and Battleflat. And Mick George have a operation in our ward, and we have had 2 grants for improvements to play parks, and they make a donation every year to the Christmas lights. So I need to declare that. I think it's non-pecuniary, and I do come with an open mind. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Berry. I've just checked with the officer to my left, and yes, you are free to vote, and it's non-disclosure. Non-pecuniary. Thank you. So non-registrable nowadays. So thank you very much, Mr. Merry. Any other interests from members? No. Thank you. Agenda item 6 is presentation of petitions under Standing Order 35. I have not received any of the petitions. So we move on to the reports of the Chief Executive on planning applications, county matter applications. Agenda item 7. Application 2023-0968/88/03. There is a suffix there as well. Mick George Limited, variations of conditions 6 and 21 of Planning Permission 2021/0683/03, relating to the operational hours and noise limits to allow operations and vehicle movements from 6 a.m. at Husbands Bosworth Quarry, Welford Road, Husbands Bosworth. They're in your agenda packers, pages 9 to 38. This application will be presented by Amelia Mystery, and we have one speaker, the landowner, Stephen Cusbon Maxwell, who will be given 5 minutes after in a bit. Thank you, Amelia.
Thank you, Chair. So this is an application. So this is an application for variation of condition 6 and 21 of Planning Permission reference 2021/0683/03 relating to operational hours and noise limits to allow operations and vehicle movements from 6 a.m. at Husbands Bosworth Quarry, Welford Road at Husbands Bosworth. The applicant is Mick George Limited. Planning permission is sought to vary conditions relating to the existing approved operational hours and noise limits at the operational Husbands Bosworth Sand and Gravel Quarry, which gained planning permission on the 17th of January 2023. Mineral extraction under this planning permission commenced in July. However, the application site and wide area has an extensive history of mineral extraction and progressive restoration back to nature and agriculture. Amendments are sought to allow up to 10 HGVs to leave the site between 6 a.m. and 7 a.m. on weekdays, Monday to Friday. It is proposed that vehicles would be loaded the working day before in the consented working hours for the quarry, that is before 6 p.m. on weekdays or 2 p.m. on Saturdays, to ensure that no other plant or equipment other than HGVs would be operational on site prior to 7 a.m. The applicant has stated that the proposed variation to conditions is sought to allow preloaded HGVs to leave the site to better serve the construction industry and potentially limit HGVs in the vicinity during the morning peak hour traffic flows. This slide indicates the application site, which is outlined by the red line area, and the blue line illustrates land control and under control of the applicant. The site is currently accessed by an existing haul road from the A5199 Welford Road, which itself leads south through Wilford towards the A14 in Northampton. To the north it leads to Husbands, Bosworth and Leicester, whilst also linking to the A4304, which head towards Market Harborough to the west and Lutterworth, and the M1 to the east. This slide shows an aerial image of the application site and a close-up of the access route previously described. The nearest sensitive residential receptors to the workings are properties in and around the south side of Husbands Bosworth. This includes properties along the southern part of Butt Lane at approximately 200 metres from Phase 1 and Town End Close, approximately 300 metres from the current extraction area. The nearest sensitive residential receptors to noise arising from HGV movements are those along residential roads off the A5199 Welford Road, particularly those which lie south of Husbands Bosworth Village, such as Kemp Drive, Town End Close and Marsh Drive. Additionally, those properties along Station Road. This is a wider view of the site location, which illustrates the range of routes that HGVs are permitted to take when travelling to and from the site. At present, there is no agreed routing for any vehicle movements to and from the site. Many of the properties within Husbands, Bosworth, Welford and those along a proposed routing system sit closer than 10 metres distance from the road or are within close proximity to the road. The applicant proposes a route for directing vehicles exiting the site prior to 7 a.m. This route travels southwards along Welford Road from the site access until they reach Station Road, where they travel westwards, then exit and join onto the A4304 Kilworth Road. Once lorries reach the A4304 Kilworth Road, they could then travel either east or west towards North Kilworth or Husbands Bosworth. This route would bypass Welford and the residential properties within and to the south of Husbands Bosworth. It's proposed that these movements be monitored using the company's software and lorry telematics. The proposed routing arrangements to control the travel path of vehicles egressing the site within the specified period has been considered. However, such a restriction, if permitted, would only transfer the entirety of any deleterious environmental effects, such as noise, to specific communities during those nighttime hours. Additionally, during the determination of the extant permission for those operations as permitted, it was not previously considered appropriate or necessary to impose a routing agreement for the site, and in this instance is not considered appropriate to recommend approval of the proposed routing for the reasons outlined in the report. Overall, in relation to routing, should the proposed routing system not be imposed, HGV movements would pass by residential properties within Husbands Bosworth and Welford, many of which are in close proximity to the roadside. Should the routing system be imposed, it remains a fundamental impossibility to divert HGVs along the route without having a disproportionate impact on certain residents, i.e. those along Station Road. Given that there is insufficient information regarding the background noise levels or modelled increases in noise levels from the proposed routing, the noise intrusion along the routing would also be unknown. For context, this is a photograph of the site access and those properties visible within Town End Close, within one of the residential estates which sits adjacent to Welford Road. With regards to noise, a noise assessment was submitted in support of the proposal. Having reviewed the submitted noise assessment, routing proposals, and all the supporting and further information, the environmental health officers from West Northamptonshire Council and Harborough District Council object to the proposals. It is considered that the proposal would generate a level of activity and noise impacts which cannot be suitably mitigated to an appropriate standard, and so would have an adverse, unacceptable impact on residential amenity and living conditions and harm to the rural environment. It is considered that the current restrictions that limits HGV movements until after 7 a.m. is entirely appropriate and HGV movement should not be permitted prior to 7 a.m. as doing so will result in adverse noise impact and may cause sleep disturbance. This view is supported by the World Health Organization's Community Noise Guidelines 1999 and more recently the Night Noise Guidelines 2009, which both promote that noise during nighttime hours between 11 p.m. and 7 a.m. be suitably managed so as to protect the public from sleep disturbance and the health impacts associated with that disturbance. During this application process, 2 consultation periods were undertaken. During the first consultation period, a total of 38 representations were received, 35 objections, 1 in support and 2 raising comments. During the second consultation period, an additional 9 representations were received, all of which were objections. To summarise, the objections received mainly on the grounds of noise, disturbance to local immunity, including impacts upon health and well-being and highway safety, and the full list of grounds of objection are listed within the report. 1 comment was made in support for local business, and 1 representation made comments with respect to their preferred routes for lorry movements. Overall, as an exercise of judgment, taking the relevant up-to-date development plan policies as a whole, and having given consideration to application, the supporting information, including the information subsequently received, the consultee comments and the representations all referred to within the report, it is reasonable to conclude that the proposed development does not accord with the development plan and as such does not represent sustainable development. The introduction of HGV movements before 7 a.m. would introduce industrial operations at the site at an inappropriate time of day, causing unacceptable adverse harm to the rural environment, local immunity, health and well-being. Sufficient economic benefits have not been demonstrated to outweigh this harm. There has been an insufficient demonstration of need and that there is little justification to start activity before the recognised 7 a.m. start time. By reason of the above assessment, it is considered that on balance the proposal does not accord with the development plan. In particular, DM1 of the Leicestershire Minerals and Waste Local Plan, GD1 of the Harborough Local Plan, which relates to sustainable development, and policy DM2 of the Leicestershire Minerals and Waste Local Plan, which relates to local environment and community protection, and DM11 of the Leicestershire Minerals Waste Local Plan, which relates to cumulative impact. It is recommended that this application is refused for the reasons outlined in Appendix A of the published report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Amelia. Could I, Mr. Harrison?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd first of all like to compliment the officers for a really... Oh, sorry.
Sorry, Mr. Harrison. If you're moving into members' debate, it will come after the public speaking. So, thank you, Mr. Harrison. Would you like to take your seat at the front? I believe you know how this works, Mr. Constable Cal Maxwell. It's great. So you will have 5 minutes to speak. When you're ready, if you press the button and the red light will come on, and Ewan will give you a 30-second warning. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Chair, members of the committee, ladies and gentlemen, thanks for giving me this opportunity to speak. Firstly, I just want to say that I'm in no way connected to Mick George other than I'm the landowner, and their planning department has asked me to speak on their behalf. But I do live in the village, and I really don't want any more lorries going through at 6 o'clock in the morning, and I'll make that absolutely clear. I've spoken to the parish council, who I'm in regular contact with, and it seems that they weren't clear what our request was, what Mick George's request was. Mick George's request is very clear, which is up to 10 lorries leaving before 6 o'clock in the morning, and all those would turn away from the village and go down Station Road. So he's asked me to give you a form of words, and the proposal before you today would allow preloaded HGVs to leave the site between 6 and 7 in the morning during weekdays, which would deliver aggregates to certain construction sites, avoiding morning peak traffic flows. Essentially, what's going to happen is up to 10 lorries will leave the site They'll go down Station Road, I'll come on to in a second, and they'll head west out towards the M1, and then go probably south towards Northampton. That's what's going to happen. In doing so, this significantly reduces the carbon footprint of the lorries during such periods with vehicles are not needlessly standing around in heavy traffic. Basically, the roads are quiet at that time of the day, so they can get to A to B, and they're going to cause less disturbance. Proposals have been modified such that these vehicles will not be routed through the villages of Welford or Husbands Bosworth during the early morning period. This being in response to representations of the parish councils, the residents, the visitors. It's pretty clear you're not going to want HGVs trundling through the village at 6 in the morning, and we're going to stop that. This early morning route following Station Road, well, there's 3 people who live on Station Road. 2 of them are farmers, and 1 of them is a council contractor. The farmers are up pretty early. One of them I know extremely well. He's always up at 5. So there isn't going to be any disturbance from them. And also full lorries make less noise than empty ones, apparently. So the villages are bypassed. And as I said, only 3 properties on that road. By allowing these early morning trips, it's going to reduce the total number of HGVs travelling through Husbands, Bosworth and Welford during the remainder of the day. You've got a finite number of vehicles that can come in and out of that site in a day. If you have some of them preloaded, leaving at 6 in the morning, there's going to be less than the rest of the day, and that's it, simple maths. It's noteworthy that your own county highways engineers have raised no objection to alternative routes which can readily be monitored and controlled. I know there was a mention of how this can be controlled. I spoke to Mick George a couple of days ago. To give you an idea of the level of control of the telemetry in his vehicles, if you give him a time and 3 digits and registration, he can tell you everything you need to know about that vehicle, what speed it's going, where it's come from, where it's going to, what it's carrying, who the driver is. So Mick George Limited, therefore, ask for the recommendation is not followed and consent granted for this minor revision. Think that as a suggestion, how about giving a 6-month permission where things can be monitored? The noise monitoring, the noise has never been a problem from that site. There isn't going to be any reversing going on, and all the vehicles on Mick George's fleet have got white noise reversing suppression. So you can't hear it from any distance. And Marsh Drive is far enough away that you don't hear any noise. Vehicles start and they leave. And that's what I've got to say. Any questions?
Thank you, Stephen. The floor for members for any points of clarification for the public speaking. Mr. Coxon.
Yes, thank you. What's the final destination of these lorries that you're thinking of going at 6 a.m.?
I mean, I'm obviously, they're not my lorries, but I did ask Mick about this, and they're going to head west, and I'll categorically state they will not go down Station Road and then turn right back into the village. And happy Mick has offered to show you the detail of all vehicle movements. That will not happen. Well, he's given me my assurance that won't happen. The vehicles will head west out towards the M1 and then go down towards Northampton and further south.
So, would they be returning before 7 a.m. then? They went out at 6.
No, they won't. They're not allowed to.
They're not
The site doesn't open until 7, so no.
Okay, thanks.
Didn't see whose hand up went up first. So Mrs. Page.
Good afternoon. All I would like to know, please, are you talking on behalf of the residents and the parish councils because they would prefer this route, or are you, or or are you talking on behalf of Mick George because it is more advantageous for the company to use that route? Thank you.
Oh, that's an interesting question. No, I'm not speaking on behalf of the parish council, but obviously I live in the village. I speak to the parish council a lot. Mick George has asked me to deliver this form of words on his behalf, but I'm not paid by him to do so. So I'm not quite sure if that answers your question, does it? Sort of.
Okay, thank you. Mr. King?
Yeah, thanks. So I think the question I got was, in the report it says that the lorries would be preloaded the day before, presumably in the existing consented time. Is that the only, sorry, in terms of if you were looking at between 6 and 7, is the only thing that would happen on the site between 6 and 7 is the lorries would egress the site, exit the site on the route that you've described?
Somebody will open up the gates.
Yeah.
And then people will come in, hop into their lorries that have been preloaded, and they'll drive out.
Okay.
And that's it.
And just one further question, if I can, Chair. So the lorries that are used at the moment, obviously I don't have any knowledge of this fleet operator.
I do.
Well, so I think that's an important point, though, because, you know, there's a lot of changes going on with lorry transmission systems. And, you know, what if these lorries, I'm just hypothetical, so I'm just kind of going to ask you, do you know what transmission system they use? Are they diesel, electric, or some other system?
I can tell you, they're all, almost all of them are under 4 years old. Most of them are under 3 years old.
Right.
At the moment, they're diesel.
Yeah.
It's not viable to run electric lorries yet. They've all got 5 cameras on them. So there's cameras facing forward, sides, back, and one on the driver. Telemetry is there, so you know at what speed the vehicle's going at any time. There have been occasions where Mick George has said, for this village, we're going to have a 20-mile-an-hour restriction on our own vehicles, and he can sit in his office and he can see that all the vehicles are abiding to that, and he's put up Mick George 20-mile-an-hour speed sensor there. So the answer is they're not electric, but they're an awful lot quieter than vehicles 10, 15 years ago.
So if I may, one final question, Chair. So in the report, again, it says that these 10 lorries would potentially reduce peak time kind of lorry movements. Yeah. So in terms of the total number of lorry movements a day, would these 10 be deducted off whatever the permitted lorry movements are per day? Yeah, so it's not a
there's a finite number of vehicle movements per day.
Okay, right.
And so the whole point of doing this, and a driver has only so many hours that he can do in a day, or in an 8-hour period with all his rests. The whole point of this is to get the materials out off site to wherever they're going, which by definition is going to be more than half an hour away because nothing's open at 6:30 or 7 o'clock. And so it will reduce the total number of vehicle movements. Sorry, it will reduce the total number of vehicle movements during the working day, as was previously.
Later on in the day, yeah.
Later on in the day,
yeah. No, I'm with you.
If you've got 100 vehicle movements,
and
you're doing 10 first thing in the morning.
Okay, that's great. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Any other questions of clarification, members? No. Thanks, Dan. And into the public gallery. Oh, Mr. Charles.
No. It's the noise, Chair. Can we do something about it?
We are. Somebody's just walking around there, I think, at this very moment. In fact, we just pause for a couple of minutes just to see if we can quieten that down.
I'll go.
Ewan will just have a quick look. Thank you. For those that are viewing online, we just have a bit of noise coming in from the neighbouring room, so we're just trying to quieten things down for a moment. So just bear with us, please. Okay, so Democratic Services are back with us, so the meeting can now continue. So I open the floor up to the members for debate. Mr. Harrison.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, I started this a few minutes back to thank the officers for their report. It's a very good report, actually. It gives both sides of views on it. And I sort of read it and looked at this and thought, my view is that they haven't complied with the original planning that was granted. And that's not a good thing when you try and reapply for something else. So there's elements there of concern. Also states in here, we have heard comments this afternoon verbally, but it doesn't state in the application the reasons for the early start in proper detail. So I just think that looking at all the evidence, I know it's an important industry with sand and gravel, and there's comments in here that the county council and parish councils supported the need within the county council of sand and gravel and materials. But I think really starting an operation like that at 6 in the morning will add more chaos and disturbance to the neighbourhood. It can't be a good thing. I get it that the drivers are behaving the best they can, but the noise is there and noise does carry. So I just cannot find, Mr. Chairman, a good reason to sort of go against the officer's recommendation looking at this, although I don't willingly want to hold up good commercial businesses, which this is, but you have to be fairness. If they don't cooperate and follow the obligations of planning consent that's already been issued, it does create a problem in my mind. And plus, I don't think they've presented it well by not explaining in full, explicit detail why the urgency, the need to have these this alteration. So I would like to move the officer's recommendation, Chairman. I'm aware colleagues will still want to comment, but that's where I am. So I'd like to formally move that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Harrison. Just very members, Amelia, I think, or Oliver, you need to just wanted to clarify the purpose of why Mick George are applying for this extension.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, the report does detail that in the covering letter in the application, the proposal is to better to serve the construction industry. and to reduce those peak hour traffic flows, and that is detailed within the report.
I get that, Mr. Chairman. On page 17, paragraph 4.1, the application does not state why the early start is required or provide any evidence to the assertion made to the application or covering letter. It was commercially necessary, other the companies would be supplying building trade at these earlier hours. That's the bit that I've looked at, Mr. Chairman, and that's the bit I've based my thought process. Going through all the document, then you come back trying to find out, hang on, what do you hang all this on? And that really put it for me in that position there, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Harrison. That was a very eloquent piece of clarification, so thank you for that. Mr. Bannister, I think your hand up for next.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, a good report, and I acknowledge, as Mr. Harrison has, the important work that the quarry does for the economic development in the country. And I also note that the thought that the applicant has made with regard to rerouting, so the noise levels within Husbands Bosworth are not to affect the residents there. And it is a recognition, I think, by the applicants and indeed by Speaker Stephen that mentioned a few moments ago that the thought process has been that it will have an impact, and that's why they have considered the rerouting along Station Road. Unfortunately, when you get to the A3403 and the indication is the HGVs will travel west towards the M1, it means going through the communities of North Kilworth and Wolcott, and those communities are based mainly around the A3403. Those communities already suffer quite a lot of large vehicle movements through their respective villages, and the car transportation vehicles that are conveying vehicles to the Bruntingthorpe Proving Ground, and to suggest that the noise that is recognised to be an impact in Husbands Bosworth is simply moved over to North Kilworth and Wolcott would be unacceptable. Having regard to the early start of those HGV vehicles, and I don't really see the evidence that is that this has been considered an appropriate mitigation for the residents in North Kilworth and Wolcott have been properly considered. And although I'll listen to other comments before finally concluding in my own mind which way to vote, at the moment I indicating that I will support the officer's recommendation to refuse.
Thank you, Mr. Bannister. I take it you're not at this stage seconding, you're going to wait a little bit later on.
Yes, I'll wait until another colleague seconds. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Bannister. Mr. Allen.
Thank you very much indeed, Chair. I'd also like to thank the officers for their report, and also for the applicant for the work that they've done to try and mitigate this. However, within the report, it's noted that the application is contrary to the policies of the council. And in particular, I draw attention to paragraph 4 within Appendix A, which states that further to this, there has been insufficient demonstration of need, and there is poor justification to start the activity before the existing 7 o'clock start time. For me personally, I can't see why the 10 vehicles couldn't leave at 7 a.m. instead of 6 a.m. On that basis, I'm happy to second the motion. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Allen. I think it was Mr. King, was it next?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So there's a bit of a quandary here because I'm not completely against this. However, I do think there is a little bit of clarity needed in terms of what's actually being proposed and how any routing would actually be enforced and monitored and all that stuff. because when you start thinking about it, not very far away from here on the A14 at Junction 3, there's a very large HGV lorry park, and most of the lorries pile out very early or in the middle of the night, and they trundle up the A6, they trundle up the A14, they come up all the roads in that area, they come along, and actually there are hundreds of HGV, very big lorries that travel on the A roads in that location, and we have no control over that. And I'm just thinking here, well, 10 vehicles, are they going to make that much difference to the network? And the answer is no. Now, what we're talking about is the very localized impact that might be had. And I think that's something here that's not terribly clear, because unfortunately the background noise level hasn't been looked at, and that's commented by the EHOs in their comments on the consultation from the borough and district councils, that, you know, there's a lack of background noise. So therefore, whilst there is a noise level that's been suggested, it's not clear how that relates to the rest of it. Now, I know that's not going to be necessarily a very popular thing to say, but the other issue is this: the materials this site is transporting are needed by construction industry. So if the lorries do leave at 7, I'm assuming that the commercial reality is those lorries get to their destination much later than they would do, ideally would desire to be for the contracts that they're working on, and therefore it's actually holding up construction work on some fairly big and small sites in other places, and that actually has a knock-on effect. So it's actually, because there is unfortunately congestion in the wider network, because there are so many, there's so many issues in that network. Now, obviously that's not explained, but I'm just making an assumption, and you can't make that assumption because it's not explained in the report. So that's why I'm in a slight sort of quandary with this, because on the one hand, 10 lorries on the wider network, I think it's neither here nor there, because there's so many lorries moving at that time in the morning anyway, because of the nature of the area with logistics and all that sort of stuff. It's not going to make that much difference. But then on the other hand, the very local area, I think there's a do we really clearly understand how that could be enforced? So I'm not against it, but I'm not sure how I could vote for it at the moment, because I don't think there's enough clarity. And so that's where I am with it at the moment, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. King. Mrs. Page.
Well, thank you, Chairman. I do love contradictions of opinions. Now, from my point of view, knowing that area very well, it is, as Councillor Bannister said, number one, the intensification of the vehicle movements on the villages that are around there. I also know for a fact that there is no control over the lorry movements or the enforcement, because I've been there. In my division, I've had this when it said, oh, there's so many lorry movements, and then I ended up having 50, 100 a day, and it continued. And I was very surprised to hear the speaker saying that all the lorries have got cameras and that the speed is controlled, because I dealt with hundreds of residents complaining about the irresponsible driving of the lorries and the damage to the roads. And in my opinion, 7 o'clock is an early enough start, because what difference are 10 lorries, so-called 10 lorries, which we can't enforce? That is in front of us, and every application on its own merit. What do they? But it just doesn't make sense. When do you fill these 10 lorries? Because the site's got to be opened. So therefore, once the site is open, then there might be extra work on the site. Then there might be extra lorries leaving on that site. It just all doesn't sit right with me. But here is my question. If, for instance, members were to be minded to approve this application, right? Now, adding, there is already an established route, yes. So then if we're doing this route, because I'm not clear in my mind, for the extra 10 lorries, so then are we creating and opening up another route? So what I'm actually asking in a way, it is if members were to be minded, so then the lorries, you can have, like I said, we can't sit there and count 10. So we could have 50 going either direction all around. So just clarify that in my mind, please.
Amelia?
Thank you, Chair. There were a few points that I just wanted to pick up there. And you one of the comments you made was around, is there an established route? And for many applications, we do have routing agreements. But for this application as it stands, or sorry, for the development as it stands, setting aside this application, there is no routing agreement. So at the moment, there is no control over where HGVs go from this site. This proposal, so this application, does propose to introduce a routing agreement, but only for the 10 lorries that would leave between the hours of 6 a.m. and 7 a.m., which is, it was shown on the presentation slides, and it's along Station Road, but that wouldn't apply to any of the other HGVs leaving at any other times of the day. The next question was around could it be conditioned, and yes, so this application is about varying conditions on the existing planning permission to allow for 10 HGVs to leave prior to 7 a.m. So it would be something that would be formed, would be secured by condition, so it could be conditioned, notwithstanding the recommendation that we have made. And then you did mention, you had a comment around when would they be filled. So the intention, and it is set out in the application supporting information, is that the lorries would be pre-filled the day before, left on site, and then they would leave in the morning. So there wouldn't be any filling of the lorries taking place in the morning period. I think that answered all of your questions.
Yes. And can I come back? So how would we, because all of this really in my mind centers 6 o'clock earlier start, which, you know, I agree it is, in my opinion, 7 o'clock is early enough. There are the noise and the reason for refusal, but I'm just being devil's advocate here. So how would we enforce that it's only 10 lorry movements? Because I do know that from my previous experience, we did, and then we ended up with lots. So what would your reply be on that? Thank you very much.
How does enforcement work, Oliver?
Thank you, Chair. So if members were minded to grant this planning permission, we would formulate a condition that sets out how this would be secured, and essentially it would require the applicant to submit details of their lorry movements to us, which we would review. Now, if we thought that they were breaching that, then we would go through a process of investigating that through an enforcement investigation. But essentially, the condition would, for the most part, be regulated and secured through the applicant or the operator submitting their HGV movements.
Thank you, Oliver.
Sorry, it has been recommended for refusal and seconded, has it?
It has.
I just wanted to.
It would have to be extraordinarily exceptional. The debate has taken place. Okay, thank you. Okay. All right, thank you for that, Stephen. Mr. Merry.
Thank you, Chair. Firstly, officers, great report, well done. A couple of points. I agree with a lot of things Councillor King has said, and I do think we need, I'm not against it and I'm not for it, I just think we need more clarity. And to me, the preferred route for the 10 early morning vehicles should be the preferred route for all of the vehicles, if it's taken them away from the village, and only 3 properties get affected, of which 2 are farmers and get up nice and early. But speaking from experience, the operation that Mick George has in Ellistown, the vehicles all have telemetrics in, all have cameras, and I can ring up the ops room 24 hours a day and give digits for a vehicle and all the rest of it, and they say that was not one of our vehicles. I've seen the ops room, I've seen the data they can provide, and they installed a camera at the quarry at Ibstock just to give that extra assurance so they could get any drivers who turn left instead of turning right. But I do think we need to have a bit more detail and really look at the preferred route for all of the traffic to make it acceptable to everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mary. Any further questions from members? No. Okay. So just for the Mr. Coxon.
Chairman, thank you. Just picking up on something the gentleman said about having a lease at a 6 months permission. I mean, would there be any help mileage in actually having a trial period of say 3 months to see how it worked? I know a lot of the application is a bit woolly, as has been said, Chairman, but I didn't know whether that might be a compromise in having a look at it at this time, Chairman.
Okay, thank you, Mr. I am definitely going to defer to a senior planning officer on that one, but you are here to debate the application in front of you. So, Oliver, do you wish to?
Thank you, Chair. So temporary planning permissions are something that we can entertain. So circumstances where a temporary permission may be appropriate include where a trial run is needed in order to assess the effects of the development on the area. So it is something that is possible. It's not what was sought by this application. And if members were wished to, and it's not what has been recommended in our report. So if members were minded to take that route, it's something that would need to be proposed. And we would also need to, as officers, go away and come up with a form of wording for conditions, both to the effect of the temporary period that would be allowed, but also the information that would need to be assessed over that temporary period as well. So it is something that is possible, but it's not something that has been put forward in the recommendation.
Thank you, Oliver. Any further questions at all from the floor? Okay, so at this point, I would just like to confirm that the Divisional Councillor, Councillor Blake Payne, is in support of the officer's recommendation. My personal observations, when I read the report, the bit that rung loud and clear to me was the World Health Authority observations. And that moving from 7 to 6 absolutely changes the dynamics of an industrialized process, is how I interpreted it. The other observation was on one of the slides when Amelia was talking us through it, and it was the access and egress point versus Town End Close, Town Road. It's a small field and it's clear space, so there's no noise buffer in there at all, as those vehicles would be pulling out. And my other observation would be, if this is proposing to move operating time to 6 AM, then presumably the actual operational staff will be arriving before 6 AM and potentially firing up those vehicles. So they're my personal observations. However, there has been a query or a question about a 6-month trial. Is there, am I doing this the right way round, Ewan? This has been raised by a member. Could we do a 6-month trial? So do we take that question first, that vote first?
Sorry.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Have we got a proposal for it?
To my mind, an amendment, that would be an amendment, but an amendment cannot negate the substantive nature of the motion. So if you, essentially what Mr. Coxon is proposing, that it's approved, so that would negate the substantive motion. So it's not a valid amendment. So you would have to vote on the motion that's on the table at the moment. And if you wanted to go with Mr. Coxon's proposal, you would have to vote that amendment, that proposal down, and then Mr. Coxon would have to propose a fresh motion, which would need seconding.
Thank you for that clarity, Ewan. So, if everybody's happy, we'll move to the vote. We have a proposer and a seconder in support of the officer's recommendation to refuse the application. So, members, all those in favour? Eight. All those against or anything different? Abstention?
So I'm going to abstain. Thanks, Chair.
The officer recommendation is approved that the application is refused. Thank you, members, for that. So we move on to agenda item 8, delegated decisions issued 1st of July 2023 to the 30th of September 2023. The information is in your reports pack. Any queries, questions, observations on the delegated decisions? No. Thank you very much, Mr. Coxon. The agenda item 9, any other items which the chairman has decided to take as urgent? There are no urgent items. Therefore, agenda item 10, chairman's announcements. The only announcement, no, I've got two announcements. So weirdly, scarily, it's December this week, and we don't meet again until the new year. So I wish you all a very Merry Christmas. Very peaceful, quiet, and happy time. And let's hope 2024 is an exciting, prosperous and successful year. Yeah, and some conflicts in the world cease. So on that, the second note is that the next meeting of the DRCRB is 11th of January 2024. On that note, I declare the meeting closed and wish you all a very Merry Christmas. Thank you, members.